Hello, friends. Today we interview Navnika Sudhir. She's an engineer in training with 1 year in structural engineering consulting experience, specialized with the design of timber, cold form steel, and aluminum. Navi moved from India all the way to the United States to pursue a Master's of Engineering degree from Cornell University and is now on her journey to become a professional engineer. In this interview, we learn about Navi's career path, her journey to become a professional engineer, and we especially learn about what it takes to pursue a degree as an international student. Without further ado, here is Navi Sudhir. Navi, thank you for joining the Nature Axis. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. Thank you so much for having me, Wilson.
Of course, of course. You were one of the very first people I thought of bringing here for a quick interview to share your story. I reached out to a few friends and colleagues to see if they would be interested in a video interview for the channel for the aim of sharing the story of civil engineers and hopefully providing some insight and value to other engineers who are just starting their career. I know you recently started your career, so
Yeah.
I think it would be a great opportunity to share about you and your story, where you come from. So, how about we get started with that? Tell us,
Yeah.
who is Navi, where you come from, and how do you get to where you are right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, originally, I'm from India. I'm from a city called Bangalore. But I actually grew up in Muscat, which is in the Middle East. So, I did almost my entire schooling there up until 12th grade. And then my family and I moved back to India when I did my undergrad in civil engineering for 4 years. And when I was there, I decided that out of all the things I did within civil engineering, structural engineering suited me the best. So I decided to do a 1 year's master's course because I wanted to gain as much knowledge as possible, which is what led me to go abroad and go to the United States to pursue a master's in structural engineering specifically. And then I ended up here, and I'm doing. I'm a professional. I mean, I'm not a professional engineer yet, but I am a structural engineer working in Pennsylvania.
That is
So,
awesome. I've always found it really strange to not call yourself a professional if you already have a degree, but
right,
you cannot call yourself a professional engineer because that could imply that you have a professional engineer
right,
license,
absolutely.
which is not the case. I know you are an engineer in training
Yes.
right now, so we'll learn a little bit more about that. But so you graduated, you did your undergrad in India,
Hmm.
and then you move all the way across to the United States to get your master's degree. How do you do that? Like, how did you, you? I'm pretty sure it was not an easy decision. It was not a light decision whatsoever. It was an expensive decision,
Yes.
most of all. So, how do you go from graduating from your undergrad in civil engineering and then saying, "Hey, I want to, increase my education, my knowledge, and go abroad to do a master's degree in the U.S. Did you want to work in the U.S.? Is this something you envisioned for yourself?
Yeah. So I initially, in my early years of undergrad, I actually did not consider further studies as an option because to me I knew I wanted to work in the industry like right after graduating. Like I didn't want to go into like a PhD or like into a specifically a research field, so I didn't really consider masters as an option. But then the more I studied structural engineering and I found out how vast it was, I kind of decided that it would be a good idea to kind of get more, just to get more knowledge and experience on it because I figured that you would need all the knowledge you can get to be in such a crucial field where, uh, you know, I was like, I thought it would be a good idea to go abroad, just because of how many opportunities there would be and how good the education is. And I just decided to try my luck. And you're right, it was a very daunting and expensive process, and especially the whole thing of, having to uproot your life in your home country and going to the United States. So that was a pretty huge thing for me. But overall, I think I've gained some really good experiences. I don't regret a single thing. I'm really glad to be where I am right now.
That is awesome, and I'm pretty sure it feels good that once you're already gone through the entire process, you're now working as a professional, making money. You'll look
Mhm.
back and say all of it was worth it. But
Yeah.
I truly admire your ability to go abroad to a whole new country with a totally
Mhm.
different language, with no family around you. I'm pretty sure that that takes a lot of courage. I moved to the United States in 2011, and to start college here. But I moved in with my entire family, so my mom and my two siblings. And to me, it was a lot easier to that transition from living your entire life in another country, moving into a new country, and then eventually studying English, studying engineering, where language may have been the barrier for you. It takes a lot of effort and courage, and I applaud you for that.
Thank
All
you.
right, that is awesome. So you already gone through this entire process to get your master's degree outside of the U.S.,
Mhm.
and you were technically considered an international student. And uh, I'm pretty sure that Cornell University did not provide you any financial aid as an international student for a 1-year master's program. How do you go about getting funding for that, getting it a scholarship? I think you mentioned you had a loan
Yes.
for your masters. Is there a process? Is how easy it is to get those kind of fundings?
So, I took a loan from India. So my loan was through my home country and not through anywhere in the US. And it's a pretty uh, it for me it was a pretty relatively a simple process. We had to go to the bank and provide all the details of my admission and all of that. And I mean, I'm sure it's different for different people, but it was a relatively simple process for us to do that, and it was important because when I had my visa interview to enter the United States, they specifically ask you, like, how are you planning to fund your education? And so you have to show some sort of proof of, like, you have these funds, or whether you've like taken a loan. Yeah, for me it was through India itself. There might be programs that are through the United States for other people, but I'm not entirely sure of the process for those kind of things.
Yeah. So does it work that you first have to apply to the university, then you
Yes.
get approved for a specific program, you then go get your loan to fund that education, and then you lastly try to get your visa?
Yes. So you have to get an admit from a university first. And then when you get your admit, they kind of the university roughly tells you how much it's going to cost for the entirety of your master's program, which you will need to show in order to ask for exactly how much funds you need for that particular program. And then the next step is, once you get your loan approved, then the next step is to show that during your visa that, yes, I can fund myself when I travel to the United States.
Yeah, that is a very good point. I believe for visa or pretty much anything, green card applications, anything immigration related, you kind of have to show that when you come to the U.S.,
Yes.
you're not going to be a what is I forgot what is exact term, but basically that you're not going to be asking for public benefits
Yes,
as
yes, that's
as an immigrant. But yeah, that's very good, and that's pretty good that you went through that entire process. I'm pretty sure your parents supported you
oh,
along the way.
absolutely, yeah.
Definitely makes things a lot easier. So you mentioned that you think you're in the right look, right phase of your life as an engineer, did anybody influence you to become a civil engineer? You know, everybody has some sort of story as to how they determine, hey, I want to be a civil engineer. You probably heard the Lego story before. How did you
Oh, yeah.
determine that civil engineering was for you?
So I think one person who definitely influenced my decision was my dad. He's actually a mechanical engineer, but he did overlook a lot of civil engineering projects. Like he would go on these site visits to all these oil and gas projects, and come back and tell us about them. And because of that, I did briefly consider going for mechanical engineering instead, but then I gave it a lot of thought, and then I decided that I would prefer civil engineering side of things. And so he definitely influenced me a lot in that way. And he's always worked very hard. I've always seen him growing up work very hard, and I'm very very thankful for the support that both he and my mom have given me in my entire journey of moving from like my home country, moving from India to here. It's not easy to see your only child moving away from you to like a different time zone, a different continent, but they've done everything they can to help me and support me through this. And they've never stopped me from following my dreams career wise, and I'm very very grateful and thankful for them.
That is awesome. I congratulate them as parents. They've done a pretty good job for
Absolutely.
you with you, and it definitely makes things a lot easier when you have parental support, and you feel like you
Yes.
can take on any challenge because you're going
Hmm.
to have two human beings that'll be there to catch you if you'll fall back
Hmm.
along the way.
Oh,
But that
absolutely.
is that is awesome. So you were decided between civil engineering and mechanical engineering. You chose civil engineering for obvious reasons. Civil engineering is a lot cooler than mechanical engineering. But I'm pretty sure you broke your dad's heart. How did he take it?
I think he was totally fine with it. I think he supported. For him, it was more about what I was comfortable with and what I would like doing. Obviously, he might be more knowledgeable about certain mechanical engineering things, but because he also overlooked a lot of civil engineering projects, he does also understand many parts of the projects that I do currently. And sometimes we talk about them and we go back and forth on, he asked me, oh, what project are you working on? What materials are you using? And what grade of steel are you using? So he understands those things, and I can still talk to him about that. So he is pretty supportive of that, and I'm really happy.
How do you talk to him about those things when you do work in Imperial and he uses metric units? Do you do some
Oh.
sort of conversion on the way?
He does actually understand imperial units pretty well. Like, uh, if I tell him, oh, this building is like 15 feet wide, he's he's okay with that. But
He understands.
yeah, and but his main thing is, oh, what grade of steel are you using? What strength concrete are you using? Because those are the things he more closely kind of understands. um so it's pretty fine
It's very fine. Okay,
talking
that's
about
good.
that.
I mention it because it's really interesting how we grow up learning mostly, well, metric and imperial up to the FE, where I think you still have some metric units in the exam,
Mm.
but then after that, it's just imperial. And it's been, my entire engineering experience has been in imperial units, except for like one or two projects that I did, I believe in Canada, that uh, were using metric units. But it's really hard to develop an intuition for those units. Like you told me, oh, I apply a 5 kilonewton force. I probably would not have any idea the
Mhm.
magnitude of that force. When you tell me 5 kips, oh, that's about 5,000 pounds. I could envision that a lot better
Yeah.
than metric units, but
It
that
was
it,
hard for me because my entire undergrad and my till 12th grade we used metric units, um, and it was another big thing that I had to get used to when I came to Cornell was having to use imperial units. And our professor, he would say that he agreed that metric units were usually better, but just because of how much the industry still uses imperial units, it would benefit us more if we did all of our calculations in imperial units. And it's a little more inconvenient having to divide things by 12 rather than dividing things by 100. That all of that kind of gets added into place, and then you have to remember that pound force and pound are two different things, but they're still denoted by the same notation. So it definitely takes some time to get used to. um, but I think I'm almost there now, and in fact now I'm more comfortable with imperial units, just having used so much of it over my masters and my professional career.
right.
And now if I had to go back to metric, it would take a little time for me to do that.
That's how it is. And that's the same thing with me actually with language. I feel like I
Mhm.
am able to express myself better in English than I am able to express myself in Spanish. And it just took a lot of time because for the longest, I would usually think in Spanish and then translate to English. So I kind of have like
Yeah.
some processing going on in the back, taking out some memory all the time. But now I reached that point where, it's natural for me to think in English, process things in
Right.
English, and then actually express my thoughts in English. So it's a similar um, uh, thing for between metric and
Mhm.
imperial as well. So now you are in engineering training. You
Mhm.
recently took your FE exam and you passed it. So congratulations for that.
Thank you.
What is next for you? Are you meeting? You're waiting to meet the experience requirement to become a professional engineer? Do you
Mhm.
know when are you taking the professional the PE exam? Anytime soon? This year? Next year? What's your plan?
Yeah. I do plan to take it sometime this year or next year. The one thing I'm kind of waiting for is I do need to transition. So as an international student, you come here on a student visa, and
Hmm.
then if you're in a STEM field, when you transition to being employed, you have like a 3-year period to get your work visa. So I'm kind of waiting for that to be finalized before I actually take the PE exam, just so that I would have it off of my mind, and I wouldn't have to think about um, all my different options. But yeah, I definitely do plan to take it sometime next year. Um, I do believe that some states have a 4-year kind of professional requirement, and my master's would definitely count as 1 year. Whereas California only has 2 years. So I might think about whether I want to take the California exam or if I want to take the Pennsylvania exam. Whatever. I do have a little time to decide that. So I might think about that in a few months.
Yeah, for sure. I California is one of those states that allow you to get your professional engineering license after 2 years of experience,
Mhm.
one of which will count as a master's completion. So you will only need 1 year of experience to qualify to become a professional engineer in California. However, there's two additional tests, engineering surveying and seismic principles exams. I think they are doable, and I actually learned a lot about both seismic and surveying when studying for those exams, and I think it's totally worth it because you learn a lot and you learn things that you can actually apply to your career, your job in the short term. So definitely, if you want to pursue the California license, even though you had to take those two exams, I think is totally worth it. Plus, I believe California does not have PDHs, so you don't have to obtain
Right. Yeah.
PDH hours every year. So that's a sweet treat. Um, but yeah, so let's see. You took your FE exam and you were an international student. Do you know if your undergrad program was ABET accredited?
It
Uh,
was not.
it was not. So
Yeah.
I imagine that to take the FE exam, you had to submit some sort of academic record to be reviewed by NCES.
Yes.
Uh, yes, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So, what I had to do was, and I took the New York FE, which I believe that most states are similar, but just for some context. And I took the New York FE, and they required that I contact my undergrad university. I had to tell my undergrad to directly send them a copy of my transcript for the 4 years that I was there. And I also had to have them fill and sign a form from the NCES and ship that along with my transcript. And the whole process for them to first send it to them, and then for them to, like, take their time to review all of that, it took like almost 3 or 4 months. So it was a long wait for me, from initially wanting to apply to write the FE and then actually being able to schedule the FE. So if you're an international student, it's definitely a bit more annoying if your university is not ABET accredited. So I would definitely suggest that you do this process 3 or 4 months before you can actually write the test, just so you don't have to wait for as long. Because I didn't know that there was this whole process involved, so it got a little delayed for me. So I would definitely suggest that you do it 3 or 4 months prior to when you plan to write it.
Wow, that is interesting to know. I did know that you have to submit your records when you're graduating from a not ABET accredited program, but did not think it would take such a long time. That's essentially how much you took for my entire PE application to be reviewed. So it
Right.
definitely is a significant amount of time, and I'm sure that you're probably going to hit some rocks along the way when you actually submit PE application. But I know you got this. You're really proactive, and you get through it. Now,
Thank you.
I do believe that civil engineers or engineers in general are more than just engineers. What does Navi do outside of work? Do you listen to any podcasts, watch any videos, play video games, read books? What do you do outside of work for fun?
So I do play video games. It's something I picked up fairly recently. I'm not like I wouldn't say I'm like a hardcore gamer, but I definitely there's a few games that I really like. That uh, you know I really like this game called Hollow Knight, which some of you might have heard of it. It's like a Metroidvania, which is like a 2D adventure game. It's a really beautiful game with really nice graphics and a really it's got a very good story. And you can get hours and hours of gameplay into it. So that's one thing I definitely recommend. I also began to crochet in my spare time. So for those who don't know, like crocheting, it's similar to knitting, except you use one
Like
hook instead of like,
knitting,
yeah, but instead of those two needles, you just use one hook, and the technique is completely different. And it's a lot of it's really fun because it's meditative almost, to keep repeating doing that over and over again. So it's become a really favorite pastime of mine. I also play the guitar and the keyboard. So I've been going for guitar classes lately, and I used to learn guitar by myself, but I just figured going for classes would give me more direction. So that's another thing that I kind of do in my pastime.
Yeah, that is great. That is great.
Thank
Did you
you.
say
Crochet. Yeah.
crochet? Okay. Do you like only do it entirely by one hand, or can you hold whatever you're?
So yeah, so we hold the thing that we're making in one hand to kind of keep it stable, but then the
Mhm.
hook is just like you only do it with your dominant hand.
Wow,
So yeah.
that takes some skill for sure. And I know you recently got your driver's license. How's your
Oh,
driving going?
it's pretty good.
That's really good. No
I
accidents
was
yet, right?
no, no. Oh my God, touch wood, no accidents yet. It's there's definitely I mean, I know some people who got their license and were just itching to go driving wherever they could, like solo anywhere, but I was not like that. I was still really scared of driving around by myself. It took a lot of time for me to like get over that fear, and sometimes I still have that fear, especially when I drive in places with a lot of traffic or with narrow roads and things like that. So I think my worst experience so far was when my roommate and I went to Philly, and Philly is a pretty I'm sure there's worse places, but Philly is a pretty bad place for driving. So it was really hard for me. Um, but I started out just driving to my office and back and forth, and then driving to the grocery store and back and forth. So I gradually kind of built it up from there. So and now I really like driving. It's I think it's really nice to just chill behind the wheel and just take it. Like my uncle who taught me how to drive described it as playing a video game, which is which is fairly accurate. So now I'm pretty comfortable with this, which is good. So definitely took some practice.
I mean, not entirely a video game because if you do crash, that's real stuff.
Oh, that's absolutely.
Yeah, but I see what you mean. My brother, he does not have a license yet, but he thinks that just because he played Vice City and all those car games, he knows
Oh
how to
gosh.
drive. In fact, when we went to Dominican Republic for vacation in May, and I was pretty impressed that we did what do you call the four wheels, the four wheels driving like on the mud and whatnot. You know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't think
It's like
so.
one of those like exterior carts with four big wheels that you drive around like a. Say like a
Oh,
motorcycle is like four wheels, four
okay, I
tires.
see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we did that, and he knew how to drive it. He never driven one before or drove in a car or anything. So I was pretty impressed by that. Now, you are an engineer. You do some knitting, crochet. You drive around. You play video games. How do you balance work and your life? How do you balance relationships, your work, your health, all these things that you have to do on a daily basis?
So that's a good question because what I found was balancing everything was really, really hard for me when I was doing my master's, and even during undergrad, because when you're a student you don't have a fixed schedule at all. Like you could have classes for the first half of the day, which again would differ based on how many classes you have per day. And then when you're back from your classes, you then have to work on your assignments, or study for an upcoming exam or anything. And so like most of your time, whether you're in class or not, is just filled with doing student things like studying or doing homework or whatever. But then one of the things when you actually get a job and start working professionally is that you only work from 8 to 5 and then you're done. You don't have to like think about working for the rest of the day or even on weekends. So those work those, so those hours after work and during the weekend are all yours. It's all whatever you want to do, you can do during those hours. Now of course, some of those hours, just being an adult is going to be filled with like chores and grocery shopping and all of that. But then if you set aside a time for that, like, you will still have a lot of leftover time where you can choose to pursue your hobbies, or connect with your friends and family, maybe do some cooking. So it definitely, balancing those things definitely got easier for me um, when I began working than when I was a student, and that's one of the things I really appreciate about having my job. So yeah.
Plus, you get paid for the work that you do. As a student, you pay for the work that you do
Oh,
because you're
absolutely.
learning. So it's for sure a lot better in terms of compensation and timing. I think I what I miss the most about school is the friendships, my classmates. Just
Mm,
seeing people all the time. Now, especially now that I live in California, I could go weeks without talking to any of my friends. And
mm,
the good thing is, I do have pretty good friends. I'm privileged that, if I don't reach out to them for a week or two, when I contact them, they're like, "Hey, how are you doing?" It's like nothing changed. Like we still keep in touch. We all understand that, life happens and it's really hard to keep in touch all the time. But that's great. So, two more things I want to learn about from you. You been really ambitious as a civil engineer, accomplished a lot so far. What is one piece of advice that you'll give to any civil engineer that is probably in any step at any phase along the journey that you just went? What is one piece of advice you'll give them?
So, one thing I would definitely say is that civil engineering has many kind of subdivisions to it. There's structural engineering, which is what we both do, and then there's also hydrology and transportation and environmental engineering. So, I would definitely say, find what interests you the best and stick to it and focus on it. If you want to do a master's in that particular stream, then go ahead and do it, because for me, while I definitely wanted to do civil engineering, I think it was only in my second or third year of undergrad when I really kind of realized that structural engineering was my thing out of everything, or out of all of the options that I was given. And another thing I would say is definitely keep in touch with your basics. Like, if you're going to be a structural engineer, definitely know all of your basic static equations, your load path, your shear force moment diagram, all of those things, because even now, as um, as an engineer in training, I still use some of those equations in my, like, some of my day-to-day activities. So definitely keep in touch with all of your basics is one thing I would say.
That is great information and great tip. I
Mhm.
think pretty much everything that we do as a professional ties back to those basics. So I do agree that that's something to pay attention to, especially for when you're applying to jobs. That's one of
Mhm.
the skills that they actually test. The companies will do a technical interview where they'll ask you about many of those basic equations. They ask you to draw bending and shear
Mhm.
diagrams right on the spot based on a particular beam or frame configuration, geometry, loading. What do you expect the shear bending diagram to look like? It's always those skills, and I was really surprised when I went through that myself because I did not, I thought it was going to be a lot harder as a I was applying to a real professional job. I would
Mhm.
expect that it's going to be, a little bit a notch above the what we learn in school, but it eventually all ties down to what we actually learn in school.
Yeah.
So that is a great tip. Lastly, what is your biggest takeaway from everything that you've gone through?
I think So, one thing that really just surprised me about myself is just how much you change as a person from when you graduate high school to when you enter your professional kind of job. Because I was looking back on it from the past few days, and I definitely realized that the person that I was during my from the beginning of my undergrad was a completely different person from when I graduated undergrad, and is a completely different person from when I graduated masters. I think your surroundings and your circumstances definitely affect the way that you perceive things and you deal with things. And for me, the two biggest things was, first of all, like getting away from home and having to live in a dorm during my undergrad, and then getting away from India to come live in a different country. And the third thing was, to be an adult and to be 100% responsible for yourself. Those things really change the person you are. And it's really, and I'm sure a few years down the line, I'll be a different person at 30 years old than I am right now at 25 years old. So I definitely think you grow a lot with all of these added experiences, especially when you're fresh out of school. And that's one thing that really surprised me about myself.
Wow, that is a lot. I
Hmm.
you it's good that you reflected on your experience, right? Able to draw those conclusions,
Right.
and you don't hit those conclusions until you're a little bit older and you have worked a little bit and you understand how you make decisions.
Right.
And whatnot. But that is great, Navi. I truly appreciate you for doing this.
Thank
It
you.
takes a lot of courage to do this. To me, it's been a lot as well to get in front of a camera, get comfortable, and
Mhm.
actually talk to another person, being recorded, and eventually publish this. So I salute you for the courage and for joining at the Neutral Axis. Any last comments, thoughts that you want to share?
I'm just really grateful that you invited me on here. And you're right, I was definitely nervous to be in front of a camera, but I think for me, this is a good opportunity. And I think what you're doing is really awesome. Like, I wish when I was still a student that I had something like your channel where you explain how to go about being a student and being a civil engineer. And I definitely think your channel is going to help a lot of people. And this is a great thing that you're doing. And I'm very happy for you and how far you've come as well.
Thank you. I That truly means a lot. That's the hope
Hmm.
that I have
Hmm.
with the new Traxxas. But hey, it's never too late to start. I just started after 4 years of experience as an
Hmm.
engineer. So if you ever still have that thought in your head, just get started. Like that's exactly what I did. I try to overthink it, study as much, learn as much, try to make this perfect. But now I'm at a point where I feel if I just hit a bar of just good enough, that's it.
Yeah,
That's it. I just have to put it out there in the world, and hopefully, some people find some value on what I do. Navi, thank you so much
totally
for
get it.
joining.
Thank you so
I
much.
appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you, Wilson.